asking, are schools finally pushing back against screen time? Now, for years, I feel like I've been getting press releases from schools racing to put technology in the classroom, celebrating AI in the hands of 3-year-olds. And now some educators are questioning, maybe we've gone a bit too far. And research, of course, continues to suggest that there are concerns about attention spans, well-being, excessive screen exposure, and then governments around the world, including here in the UAE now, looking for tighter controls on social media. So what should technology in education actually look like in 2026? How can you get that balance right? Paul Gardner is with us today, the founding vice principal and head of secondary at Ambassador International Academy in Mankhool. He is an award-winning educational technology leader, spending more than 14 years in senior leadership roles across the UK, Spain, here in the UAE. And Paul, what I find really interesting, having read into you a little bit, is that you've gone from winning awards, from integrating and using educational tech, to now in your new school kind of actively reducing screen use. What's been your kind of journey in learning over the years in that space?
Firstly, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Plenty of learning, lots of learning that's taken place, but fundamentally the attitudes have stayed the same. It is about providing a really high quality education, and technology has its role to play within that. But I think what has happened, I think this is something that parents can recognise in their own homes, is that technology use has increased significantly over the past 5 or 10 years, and it's gone too far in schools. There is a place for technology to be used, but not everywhere. And I'm glad that in your intro you mentioned about screen time, because screen time and innovation are completely different things. And I think a lot of schools have blurred the lines between the two. And that's something that I think that a lot of parents are recognising.
I think a lot of parents also look to the schools to having all the answers. And I know in our school, when there was this idea of bring your own device from, I think it was year 1, a lot of the parents said, no, that's not what we want, and the school listened, and that was pushed back. And I know you've got policies there at Ambassador as well. Is that we kind of trust in the educators to know what's best for our kids, especially when it comes to education. We are effectively outsourcing that to the classroom. And I think what I want to ask you about is, how do you make that choice about when technology is appropriate, when it is constructive and creative and innovative, to borrow yours, or when it's just a kind of, do you know what, let's just bring it in, and that kind of looks like we're leaning into the future?
I think it comes down to intentionality. We've been very intentional at Ambassador. The reason being because we know when we're building a curriculum what we want to achieve. It's the same with maths or English. With innovation, and we have 3 bespoke lessons for innovation from grade 1 actually all the way up into secondary school. But we have specific aims that we want to meet, within our innovation curriculum, within our maths curriculum, within our English curriculum. And how we get there is the key bit. We're not looking to actively substitute technology in as a panacea for all things educational.
Or indeed human teaching.
Exactly, no, 100%. But where we can go further with it, then we might look at that. So that's why we have a BYD policy as well, but we only have it from grade 5. So students are not bringing in their own devices into our school in grade 1, in grade 2, in grade 3, in grade 4. By the time they get to grade 5, there becomes a little bit more utility in it, and then heading into secondary. But even then, we need to be and I come back to that word intention. We need to be intentional about how we're using the technology in the classroom. So we cap it at 45 minutes a day.
Wow, because that's really interesting. Just recently, I had a message from a parent who's listening saying their kid was on an iPad or some kind of screen for 2 to 3 hours a day as part of their school day. And then, of course, kids get home and you watch TV, and I get all of that. I certainly was watching, Neighbours and Newsround and whatnot for an hour or so when I got home. But I think when we think about screen time, it's very different in terms of, are you using it to create? Are you using it to be passive? So you need to make those 45 minutes count then, Paul.
Firstly, Neighbours, blast from the past, love that. But in terms of the 45 minutes, it's, how can I put this?
Is it more to do with making sure that you're using it in the right way rather than kind of handing over the device and going, right, we're going to have a longer teacher break now? It's got to be for a purpose and an outcome.
Exactly that, exactly. And also, if you look at what's mirroring in their home as well, so when parents are trying to create sensible boundaries in the home, and then the children are going into school using devices for 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and then they're bringing those habits to the home, and then it's far more difficult for the parents. Exactly. So there's definitely there's two parts to this coin, of course, but the schools need to be doing their bit, and of course there is a huge opportunity for technology innovation, Lego leagues and computational thinking,
and there's lots of after school clubs that'll be leaning into coding, and I'm all for it if it is being done with kind of future skills in mind, rather than it being digital babysitting or gamification dopamine hits just to make keep those little brains just 6-second attention span. Now there's also the ethical use of AI and coding and robotics and future skills that you need to be balancing as an educator as well. So when it comes to bringing in parents who are maybe doing tours of the school and asking you those initial questions about things like phone use and policy use, what's the appetite you're getting from parents? Because I guess the counter is some parents worry that less screen time, less tech might leave their kids behind.
So again, I think it's a differentiation between screen time and tech. There's plenty of room for innovation in schools. There's not really an appetite for screen times, and nor should there be. Nowhere in the Dubai vision for 2033 is there, to say more screen times in schools. Yeah. It's not there at all. And we tour a lot of parents in the school. We're open for tours now, and we're seeing a lot of parents. But the reality is, there isn't a single parent I've spoken to who thinks that we need to have more screen times or more, phone use or etc. in school.
With the phone use, only because our daughter's going to secondary, and it was really interesting when we were doing the school tours about. It's really important to me, what is your policy on mobile phone use? Because that does very much set the tone. So you've got an opportunity here with a brand new school, to be like, right, this is our value system from the outset. And you've already said, bring your own device from grade 5 there, Paul. What about mobile phone use? Because obviously the UAE is taking a stance on social media now.
Yeah, we're really clear on phones that there is no need to have a mobile phone in schools. If you need to contact your son or daughter or vice versa, there is a means to do that. That's worked for a very, very long time. You call the school and we can go in, sort that out. So what kids do when they arrive in school, they hand their phone over to their homeroom teacher in the morning, and that homeroom teacher puts it in a safe in the back of the classroom with everybody else's phone. It's in a little pouch and it stays there. A lot of schools are experimenting with different things, and it's great to see that schools are trying different things. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of schools are using the pouches that students take with them. The reason we haven't done that is quite simple. You know what it's like yourself. If you've got your phone on you and it vibrates and you don't know what's on it, that's even worse than not having it in the first place.
Because then it's like, okay, what could it be? Or I think all of us have had that kind of phantom vibrate or buzz and thought, was that? And then you check, there's nothing actually there anyway. For me, it's funny because I was just going to ask you about Toy Story 5. For me, it's out of sight, out of mind. If it's in a different room, even better. We're talking about sleep later in the show, keeping, charging phones out of rooms, and with kids, saying like, right, 9 o'clock, taking the device, they're charged in the kitchen or whatever that might be. I think it's really interesting the different ways people are navigating it. And I think it's almost a bit too early to say what's the most kind of so-called successful. But from my point of view, psychologically, that makes the most sense. If I've got my school bag and I feel the little vibrate of it going against my lunchbox and my water bottle, that's going to distract me from a lesson.
No, 100%.
No doubt.
And the nice bit is that they collect the phones at the end of the day. So they have that kind of digital free day, so to speak, in school. And again, this is something that I've done in previous schools where they hand them in the morning, they collect them in the afternoon. It's a nice touch point for the pastoral team as well, because there's a secondary benefit where you're seeing your homeroom teacher at the end of the day. So often teachers are picking up on little things that have happened during the day. It's like we call it the handshake. So it's that kind of off you go until tomorrow, just checking that everything's okay. It's a nice one. And we work a lot with external experts. So Dr. Alison Burrows, who I think has been on the show a number of times.
Regular on the show when it comes to childhood development and screen use.
Well, she's been very helpful in terms of formative thoughts on this particular topic. So we were chatting recently and she talked about how, 8 to 12 minutes is a distraction that lasts once a child has been distracted from a notification. And if you think of a learning period, a 50-minute lesson, actually that's huge. That is absolutely huge. So again, we just don't feel there's a place for it in schools.
I also feel like what you're demonstrating is a genuine curiosity towards the data, and then how can we best benefit our child's environment and their learning as well. So kudos. But we're going to talk about what else it takes to build a school from scratch. Joining us in studio today, we've got Paul Gardner, who's the founding vice principal, head of secondary at Ambassador International Academy in Mankhool. We're talking screen use now, and we'd love to hear from you. What's your school's policy on phones and devices? How do you feel about it? And I'm also curious about culture as well. How do you create a community from scratch? What are some of the challenges when it comes to new schools in the UAE right now? And what are you most excited about? You can reach us on 4001 on the app or the WhatsApp. We've been talking tech in schools and actually a completely new school and opening a new school. I guess it's a bit like launching a startup. You've got this blank canvas. You've got this chance to create a culture from day one and maybe opportunity to rethink lessons from your own past, assumptions that have shaped education for years. And this August, Ambassador International AIA Mankhool is opening its doors here in Dubai. Leading the second school is Paul Gardner, who's in the studio this afternoon. He's had senior leadership positions across 3 countries, and he's now tasked, no pressure, Paul, with building a community, attracting families, getting great staff. And we've been talking about, balancing academics and tech, but I think also innovation, as you mentioned, but well-being is, and rightfully so, front and centre. Kids don't learn unless they're feeling happy and safe. And I think with a new school, as I said, huge opportunities in setting that tone from day one. But it's also a lot of who are we? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to have in our classrooms? So what excites you then about opening a brand new school rather than just joining an established one?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a huge responsibility and one we take very seriously. We're quite fortunate, though, because we are a new school, but we're actually, the group Bridge Education is very active in the city, in the region already. There's a number of schools, in Sharjah, in Dubai, international curriculum schools, where we can kind of lean into, what they've done previously. And there's some outstanding practice going on, across the city in those schools. So we're lucky to lean into that. But equally, myself and Ruth, the founding principal, Daniel, our head of primary, and Trish, our head of early years, there's a breadth of experience there that we can kind of learn from each other. So it is 100% a huge opportunity, but a massive responsibility too. We've been doing a lot of outreach with parents. We're doing a lot of webinar events and online events, and as the school opens, which is imminent now, which is very, very exciting.
2 months or so.
But even before that, so the site itself will be open for events and opportunity to bring that community into the school site before day one.
Because I think that's always the danger, isn't it? With opening a new school and being conscious that you've got, classrooms to fill, seats to fill, fees to pay. That, and I'm certainly not talking about you, but with some schools, it's an idea of right, we're going to do really low founding fees. We're just about getting people in and not really understanding about who you want to be attracting and why, and vice versa. It's a two-way process. How do you think you can create a culture and a community from scratch? What do you want students to feel when they walk through on day one?
I think, again, we've been fortunate in the sense of the ownership of the group and their attitude towards running the school. We are purposefully capping at 1 form entry to start the school, and the reason we're doing that, so it'll be less than 250 kids no matter what on September the 1st, and the reason for that is it allows us to really kind of mold that culture very purposefully with a smaller group of students. There's no doubt, given where we are in the city, minutes from downtown and international curriculum, there's not really another premium IB school in that area. So it is, it's going to be very popular, and certainly over time it's going to be hugely, hugely popular. But right now we're capping that because we want to get the culture right. Because you're absolutely right, from a parental perspective, that's what you want. You want to be going to a school where when the kids are walking in the front door in the morning, they feel known. The staff know who they are, and not just their teacher. It's the people who are in the classroom next door and the people who they'll meet on duty. And certainly for secondary, we're opening in grades 6, 7 and 8 next year. We will know, I know all the kids already, because we're meeting them already, and the mums and dads, but all of our staff, and we went very early when it came to recruitments as well. We were recruiting in November, December, because we know that's when the talent pool is at its richest. So we've been able to get heads of department from outstanding schools in the city, which is great, because we know they're going to bring in a lot of quality. But they are going to know every child in the school by the end of the first week, because it's going to feel like a really community-orientated school. So we're quite excited about that.
I want to ask, because as you said, you've got parents coming to visit the campus, and I know you've got decades of experience now with global education. We've got so much choice now in the city, Paul, when it comes to parents visiting schools and doing those tours. And I'm a firm believer that when there's a feel, there's something, your shoulders drop a little bit and you go, yeah, this is it. And there might be people on the same school tour that have the complete opposite reaction, but there will be this, okay, this is the place for us. But in terms of key questions, what do you think can be really insightful ways of understanding if a school's the right fit for your family?
So I think it comes down to values, and I agree. By the way, you see it. It's
it.
very visible with parents when they come in and they go, "Oh, it's almost like a relaxation when they're like, I found it. Great. I know my kids are going to be happy here. I know they're going to be safe. I know they're going to be challenged." I would suggest that you look for a school that mirrors your values in terms of who we are. We touched on this before, but we're a low tech, high movement. So we got PE every day, Monday to Thursday.
Wow.
4 times a week, which again is very, very different to other schools. So with a strong focus on reading, and again, I could do a whole hour on that. I could do. But fundamentally, we're low tech, we're high movement, and again, if that's your vibe as a parent, if that's what you're looking for, then this is a school for you. But equally, there are loads of great schools. Dubai is a fantastic place.
It is, and I think in the great thing is we've got lots of choice, and then the bad thing is you've got lots of choice, and it feels like this big responsibility of oh gosh, what if I don't choose the right one? I remember looking in a Facebook group for our girls' school about a year or so ago, and one parent saying, I really feel like the academic rigor isn't there. I was expecting, X, Y, and I was like, well, that's not why we go. That's actually not priority for us, which, I'm kind of lucky enough to be able to say that, the girls are thriving academically, but I'm not a particularly academically pushy parent. And I just thought, isn't that interesting that you feel that what you're getting is at odds to your expectations or your values, whereas you probably should have known that from day one, and there will be a plethora of schools that will have those rigors or those values that match you, but you kind of need to be getting a feel, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I think the first question from a parental perspective is, which curriculum do I want?
Yes.
And certainly for me, I was, you see my leadership background is largely in the British system for a very long time. And about 5 or 6 years ago, as my boys got a bit older, and I was starting to look at their profile and looking a bit broader, looking at the IB, I realised that this is a more modern curriculum, and it's a little bit more future focused, a little bit more skills and innovation focused. So that was the right path for me as a dad, but also as a leader too.
Can I just ask you, because we're going to run out of time, Paul, but if we were to kind of fast forward in 5 years' time, what would be your marker of success, in terms of your legacy as a leader in the school, but the impact that you want to have on the students? What would you make you look back and go, yeah, we did a great job opening there?
So 2 things really. Firstly, the kids are doing well, but they also are well. They're happy. They're enjoying school life. They're participating in all things, in all the opportunities that they have, the ASAs, the curriculum opportunities, and they're also doing well in school. That's really important to us.
Thank you for your time. I've had a few people asking for the full name, which I will tell you now. And we've had in studio Paul Gardner, who is from Ambassador International Academy Mankhool. If you didn't catch that, just send me the word school. Paul, and with your permission, I'll share the website. That'd be all right?
100%. Yeah.
Amazing. All the very best. Enjoy, hopefully, a quietish summer, because when those gates open come end of August, it's going to be all systems go. But thanks for your time. Really, really interesting to think about the curiosity and to, again, borrow your word, intention behind it. It sounds like it's going to be a fantastic one.